So, good day, everyone. We're here for another episode of the DVD show. So, for today, we have a current PVL analyst, and she's also a former Ateneo Blue Eagle in the women's volleyball. And she was also a player for Generica, I remember, in the Philippine Superliga. And she also played in the PVL for a couple of teams like Chocomucho and Akari. So, I'll now welcome here on the DVD show, Jamie Lavitoria. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yay, thank you so much for reaching out.
Yeah, appreciate you. Yeah, appreciate you coming on to the podcast. And even if we saw each other in the games, it's finally good now to have a
Yep.
conversation about volleyball and about your career. So yeah, to start things off, since now it's focused more on FIBA World Cup. There's not much volleyball going on here in the
Yep.
country, so there's no PVL. So how's life been like for you? Like, do you have other jobs or other ventures you're doing aside from being an analyst in the PVL now that there's no volleyball?
Well, this is actually my first year of not being an athlete. So I'm, enjoying myself this year. I'm spending more time with family, but I'm also taking into consideration the break from PVL because I know that there's still news even though there's no current season. So I still make sure I'm updated with what's happening.
Yeah, so yeah, talking about the PVL that I wanted to talk about you being an analyst. Since like in volleyball and in basketball, whether in international or in local, there are players now who are pursuing media compared to like in the previous generation. So for you, what was your journey like when you were a player? What was your journey when you were getting this role as an analyst? Like, did someone call you and then you said yes right away, or was it like a long discussion, long thinking? What was it like?
So rewinding back to 2019, Mama Lars, he works also in the production for PVL and UAAP. He had brought this opportunity up to me by being a PVL analyst after UAAP, because that was during the time when I went back for UAP season 82, right before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So I had told him, oh, wow, like I never really, you know, viewed myself in that type of work, but I was so game to try it out. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So, towards the end of last year, I felt the need that, I wanted to branch out and redirect my life, switch it up a bit, but at the same time, still continue talking about sports, something that I love so much. So, December of last year, I did some simulations. It's where you practice with your anchor, and I did a few of those. I learned what not to do, obviously, and what I should work on. And now, yeah, so I'm an analyst for UAP and PVL this year, and I love it so much.
Yeah, that has been great hearing you behind the mic and listening to your takes and your
Yay!
insights of the sport. So, yeah, talking about that you wanted to try other things also related to sports during the pandemic. Did you try anything else aside from being an analyst, or was it specifically being a player and an analyst?
Just being a player, actually. Well, during the pandemic, I was still in Chocomucho during that time. So we had Zoom training almost every day during the pandemic because, you have to still make sure you work out. We had team meetings, Zoom meetings, of course, during that time, just so we're updated with each other's lives. Coach O really made sure that he we were updated with everything that was happening, just to gauge how we were mentally and also physically. So during that time, we were still all about volleyball.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about you mentioned that you had simulations, and I've heard stories also that people would get nervous and not. They don't know what to expect, and they'd say like other things. And I even heard before, like in basketball, naman, not volleyball, that he didn't get in because he accidentally cursed on the simulation or like in the audition. So, for you, what was that experience leading up to your first assignment or first game day?
So last year, like I said earlier, I started my simulations back in December, and I had no idea what I was doing, honestly. I obviously, when I was an athlete, I would hear the commentators in the background. So I kind of had, an idea, but obviously when you're actually in it, you obviously get nervous. So I had to do multiple simulations um, to actually get what they wanted, because I think during that time, um, because I realized when being a player, you're so critical of your own game, right? So when I was doing simulations at the start, I was critiquing the players, like I sounded like a coach, which is very annoying, right, to hear on air. So I had to switch it up a bit and add a more positive light to it, because you're also educating people that have never probably watched a volleyball game ever. So I really had to detach myself from player to now being an analyst.
Yeah, being an analyst is also, yeah, it's a great learning experience because many of
Yes.
these people, like, they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of insights, but it's different, yeah, when you articulate it and
Mm-hmm.
thousands or millions are possibly hearing what you're saying. So talking about that, would you also say that it's been a great platform for players to get their voice heard? Since I mentioned, like, before, not I don't think it was a big thing where current players or young players have the opportunity to be on the behind the mic, whether like in as an analyst or even an analyst in shows like the game. So what's your opinion on athletes actually having the platform and also having an opportunity in the broadcasting side?
I think it's great for athletes to share their insight from what they learned. And also, what I noticed when I would cover games, I'm critiquing, right, each player, and I know what they're going through. So I have some sort of empathy towards what they're feeling, especially during the UAP, for example. These kids are under a great amount of pressure. So I'm able to connect their stories with mine. And I think that's very good for the audience to hear.
Yeah, and talking about, yeah, connecting the stories, because for sure, the people or the individuals who have actually pursued volleyball have something different to say compared to the
Yes.
ones that haven't experienced it at that high of a level.
Yeah.
So for you, what's something, a story that stuck out to you, or what's something that you've learned from being an analyst that you didn't really come into this venture expecting when you were at the early part of it?
So when I started out being an analyst, I kind of entered blindly. I didn't really know what I was doing, but what I did notice, um, from when I'm now an analyst to when I was a player, I realized, not in terms of the actual players, but the work that comes into the production committee. When I was a player, I knew of, you know, the anchors and analysts. I knew of the people behind the scenes, but I didn't realize the magnitude of how hard, each producer, each director puts in. And I realized that, you know, we also know what it's like being on a team,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But with an actual volleyball team, there's a loser at the end of the day. But then I realized with the production committee, um, we always win at the end of the day. I didn't realize how much thought and heart is put in the work, because when you're an athlete, you're just so focused on your game. Not saying that we discredited the people behind all the production, but I'm just so grateful now seeing this perspective, and yeah, I'm just so grateful to be part of this family.
Yeah, yeah. Since you were talking about how media is very different in terms of your perspective when you're an analyst compared to an athlete, I wanted to ask, what do you think is the future of broadcasting or media in terms of volleyball or even women's sports here in the Philippines? Because there are shows like, yeah, The Game, or even like the one of Siege Tantenko. She has a podcast featuring like women athletes. So like, what do you think is the future? Because before, we don't have that platform to try to like expand the knowledge or your awareness to more Filipinos or even international audience. So what do you think is the future of it here in the Philippines in order to gaining more of awareness?
Well, 2023, it's all about social media, right? Instagram, TikTok. And luckily, with those platforms, we're able, like I said earlier, we can really share the stories of all these athletes and hopefully inspire the audience. Because when I was a player, a lot of our fans actually don't know what goes behind closed doors. They only see you when you're on the court, right? But they don't know how many hours you train a day. They don't know that, for example, there's a player that was able to spike down the line, right? Let's say, for example, spike down the line. But, the fans don't realize that maybe the day before she was struggling to do that for 2 hours, but she was able to manage that during the game. And with that, social media, hopefully can there's a chance for them to share their stories. But with social media and having this platform, I think it's great, especially with the popularity of volleyball, with a lot of UAP players now in the PVL, and a lot of teams are just stepping up.
Yeah. So how about you as an analyst for PVL and UAAP? Do you plan to like do this for the next couple of years? What's your plans, or do you just go with the flow and see where it goes?
I definitely want to pursue this for a very long time. I when I told you this earlier, when I entered, I didn't really know so much, but I try and learn every day. I try and learn from my peers, from my bosses. Um, at the end of the day, you want to inspire the kids, hearing your voice and you sharing your stories. And I think that's what the game is all about. Inspiring the young girls. It's the same perspective as when I was a player, coming from Ateneo. You don't realize how many little girls would want to have just, a picture with you, that just makes their day. And I think I still have that same mindset now being in broadcasting.
What are some of your favorite moments though of being this broadcasting? Since you say that it's really been fun for you and been a great learning experience. So yeah, what's been your favorite, whether with behind the scenes or whether it's on camera?
Uh, well, in terms of behind the scenes, no doubt, I love the people there.
Mm.
It's a very different environment from when I was a player. The people there, they genuinely want to help you out. And I always tell my peers, if there's something that I need to work on, let me know. Like, I make sure honesty is key, because I want to be better every day, and I need to be able to hear these critiques. With In terms of being on air, for me, a lot of people reach out to me and they tell me that I'm a natural at this, and I really get shocked, because when I'm on air, I'm really just having a conversation with my anchor. It honestly doesn't feel like work, which is a good thing, I guess. So,
Yeah.
just having a conversation with your anchor on air, I just love it so much.
Yeah. Was there any time that you felt that you might be too comfortable and you might say something that you can get canceled or you can get a warning from it, or did you? Or it's always on the front of your mind to not, yeah, like swear or say something that could be controversial.
When I, step foot on the court, sorry, on the panel
Yeah,
side, sorry,
yeah,
on the panel side, I really stay professional. And it's funny you asked that, because a lot of my friends, when I'm off air, I'm obviously
yeah,
no filter.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
um I'm good at controlling what I say. Or, for example, if someone has a great set, I am mindful what I say. I don't say a swear word, obviously.
yeah,
So I've been good at that. I've been good at that. I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully that keeps up 100%, so that there won't be any trouble caused or
Yep.
any individuals tweeting about what you said on the mic. So
Yep.
yeah, hopefully all goes well. But yeah, since you're talking about how you're like how people say you're natural or how you've been having fun time being on an analyst, we want to like also reminisce and go back to how you fell in love with the sport and how you're able to actually talk about it like it's natural for you. So I want to ask, since people are more familiar with you when you were playing for the Blue Eagles already for women's volleyball at the collegiate level, I wanted to ask first, like, where you grew up. I'm not sure. I don't think you grew up here in the Philippines. And
No.
yeah, how was your childhood like, and what were like your activities when you were a child? Like, do you do other things aside from volleyball before you seriously pursued volleyball?
Yeah. So I grew up in the States, north of San Francisco, called Marin County. I moved to the Philippines when I was 18. I grew up in, I'm from the States, but I grew up in a Pinoy household. We go to church every Sunday. We have the classic Filipino parties with great food, karaoke. Um, we didn't go so much to the beach. With me here being in the Philippines, I go to the beach all the time. I didn't go to the beach so much because the beaches are freezing in
Oh,
SF.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't swim in those, it's
yeah.
freezing. Um, I played volleyball start of grade 7. My best friend actually bribed me to go to tryouts. She told me, if you go to tryouts, I'll buy you candy. So I said, okay, cool, candy, why not? And then
Yeah.
I ended up loving it. Prior to that, though, I did taekwondo actually. Not played, I um, did ballet when I was younger. And my mom was like, okay, no, she can't be there. She's too stiff. She can't be in ballet. And then I
Yeah.
did taekwondo for a bit. I think at the time I was red belt at
Mm.
that time. And then I left to play volleyball. And yeah, I've been playing. I love the sport so much. I remember when I entered volleyball, this is when there were no positions during that time. So everyone just like rotates. And I
Yeah, yeah.
remember I'd freak out every time I was about to serve. And I think um, at that time, not everyone was doing overhand serve.
Mm,
And
okay. Yeah, yeah.
I was so nervous because I don't think I could even do underhand serve at the time. So that's why I would freak out when I was about to go on the service line. But luckily my teammates were very supportive, and they were you're so young. I mean, you're competitive, but you're so young where you're just happy to be there, and you have teammates and you have your coaches.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about playing volleyball in like grade 7 when you started it. I mean, it's been people have been wanting volleyball to grow at the grassroots program since it just started getting popular recently, but it's more on the
Yes.
collegiate and professional level. So, based from like numerous years you've been here in the Philippines, like what could you see is like the difference of at that level of volleyball from when you're in San Francisco compared to when you're here in the Philippines?
So I did 4 years of volleyball in high school, and then I actually did a year of college back in the States. And I have to say, the level here is much higher from where I was in college. I played at Dominican University, it's a D2 school. We only had practice once a day. And then when
Oh,
I
okay.
moved here in the Philippines, this was 2013. So it's my 10th year here. Crazy. It's gone by so fast.
Yeah.
Um, I when I moved here, I didn't honestly know what I was getting myself into. I had met the athletic director at that time, Sir Ricky Palou and Sir
Oh,
Tony Boy. They were actually the ones who recruited me. So they flew
okay.
to the States to recruit for basketball, and perfect timing, we had met up. And I explained my story. I was like, I'm not happy where I'm at. And in my mind, I really wanted some sort of change in my life. I don't know, I had this gut feeling I wanted to do something new. And I moved to the Philippines within 2 months. I think it's either 2 weeks or 2 months. I don't remember anymore.
Mm.
But then, my parents being so supportive, they were like, okay, go for it, it's your life. And then when I moved here, this is a few months prior to Coach Ty even arriving. So at that time, it was Coach Timmy and Coach Parley. We had training once a day. It was still kind of chill at that time. And then Sir Tony brought Coach Ty. And little did we know what we were getting ourselves into. We had training twice a day. We started running in the morning. And mind you, we didn't really know what was happening. We just followed what he wanted. But it was no joke, from Thailand, and we all know how that country plays volleyball. It was intense, super
Mm-hmm.
intense.
Yeah. And so welcome to you in the Philippines with Coach Tayel. I've had several of your teammates come here at the podcast and they discussed a lot of stories also. So yeah, maybe you could also share a few later. But before we go to that, I wanted to touch on what you said where and you said that it was difficult for you and you wanted the change in the from the States and where you were playing in San
Yeah.
Francisco. So how did you use that as like a drive or like a hunger to actually succeed here? That did you use that as motivation and proving your worth here in Ateneo and making the Philippines like your new home since you felt you needed a change from where you were previously?
Yes, so when I moved to the Philippines 2013, I was 18 years old. Sorry, when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that was ages. That was a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had to sacrifice a lot. And I think the number one sacrifice was being away from my parents and my family. But I used, like, to answer your question, I used that as until now, actually.
Mm.
I use them as a motivation because I've built so much here in the 10 years that I've been here, and everything that I do with me being in this new career. Um, I really do it for my parents, no doubt. And I'm also the only child. So
Oh,
it's not easy. I have to say during my college days, because I was 18, I was so young. I wish I had FaceTimed my parents more during that time, um, because we had training twice a day. We were so tired from training, and also the time difference was difficult for my parents and I. So there would be days where I would say, "Oh, mom, I'm tired. Like, let's FaceTime tomorrow." But as I got older, when I turned, I think 23 until 28, I FaceTime them every day. There's not a day that I don't FaceTime them, only because I'm getting older and I really value, I make sure I value the right things and prioritize the right things, and that's really my parents.
yeah, that's a fantastic point that the audience could learn from also, and yeah, they could also emulate that because maybe there are some that maybe take it for granted or
Yeah.
value their time to other things, but then also their parents should be something that they should put at the utmost priority within their daily routine. So yeah, that's great that you shared that. But yeah, moving here the Philippines. I wanted to also ask about like how did you experience how what was your experience like initial experience with the life here because it's not different. Like I go to the States often when I was younger because my mom's siblings are there, so we have relatives there. So I know it's different from here. So how did you adjust like living there for almost your whole life and then now moving here where it's hot, where there's a lot of traffic and the food's also different. So yeah, how was that for you?
Um, growing up in the States, though, I told you I lived in a Pinoy household. Like, my parents are both Filipino. So we had Filipino food all the time. Like, I love Filipino food.
At least
But
the food, yeah.
yeah, the food,
Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah.
When I moved here, I loved it so much, which is hard to believe because growing up, my family and I, we would visit the Philippines when I was a kid, and I would hate it here. I would
Oh,
complain, the classic Phil oh, it's so hot. Like, why am
yeah,
I getting so many mosquito bites?
yeah.
But that I'm living here. Um, the adjustment was great, and I have to say it's because of my teammates, the Ateneo team during that time. I think that was season 76.
Mm-hmm.
Gia, Mitch, Anna, Kim, Atelai, Ella, Ate Den, Kiwi. Um, I went out a lot also. Social life was great.
Yeah,
I would say it was a
yeah.
de-stressor for us. I didn't have a hard adjustment, I have to say. I mean, aside from being away from my parents, but you know, Pinoys are very hospitable, so I was able to have a smooth like transition.
Yeah, that's great that your teammates were there and it's like your second family and for sure it showed that how I see like on social media that you guys are still close even if you guys are all like
Yep.
graduating from Ateneo
Yeah.
already. So that's terrific that you have a family like individuals here. So moving on, yeah, to your stint with Ateneo, I wanted to ask about Coach Tai, since he said it was surprising that he had that
Yep.
kind of training. So how was that in terms of your perspective? Since I heard some of your teammates also, since if you have a coach like that, it's okay. You can either like fold or like quit or just pursue something else, say it's not worth it. But then for you and for everyone else that were there during like the winning runs of Ateneo, you guys stuck to it despite the difficulties. So yeah, what kept you there on the team, and what what were the challenging times when you maybe decided maybe it's not for me, but then you still stuck it
Yeah.
out?
I'm a very firm believer in um, I don't like quitting just because things get hard, right? I don't really believe in that. You have this commitment and I'm going to do, give my best. I'm going to give the best of my abilities, and you're on a volleyball team, right? So of course there were moments where I wanted to stop. No doubt. No doubt I wanted to stop multiple times, but you're on a team, right? And if I leave, it's going to affect the team, right? So
Mm.
I always had that team mindset. I do believe I've always been a team player, whether it's, helping a player on the court or most importantly outside of the court. I think it's important to have that bond outside of the court. And like you said earlier, a lot of my teammates are still my very close friends until now because we've been through the same thing. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, but when I talk about the Ateneo days with my teammates now, we look back at our Coach Ty days, um, and we laugh, and we still get surprised of how our bodies were able to handle what we went through until now. I'm surprised, like, I don't have permanent aches on my bodies. I have to say, I'm still shocked.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I have to say, in terms of mental toughness and this sounds cheesy, but it's shaping who I am today. I have to give credit to Coach Ty, no
yeah,
doubt, because those are the my first years of being away from home, and they were one of the hardest. So I really had to learn. I would confide in my parents, but I would confide in them with them physically. They were with me at the house. So being away from them and having to go through a lot of those mental, emotional things, it was hard. But luckily, the team, we just had an end goal of, just sticking together and doing our best.
yeah. Do you think Coach Ty's style, like it's only effective for like a couple of individuals, like several individuals? It won't really be effective for everyone, like in any school or any university. Like, do you think it was effective because they're at Ateneo and you have like leaders like Eliza and like Den, and like these people that would also keep the group together and have the common goal? Or do you think that could be effective in like any other university? Because I think that, I mean, like in LaSalle lang in basketball, like the last UAAP season, there were a lot of issues that I don't know if it's confirmed or what, but there were a lot of off court issues. So even if they were talented, they didn't even make the final four. But then, like for you guys, like you guys won what, two championships, season 76 and season 77. So obviously it worked out, but before that, you weren't sure if it would work out.
Yeah, we didn't know if it would work out only because there was also language barrier. But
Yeah,
to answer, yeah, key factor.
yeah, yeah.
To answer your question though, if Coach Tai had gone to other universities, it would definitely work, no
Mm,
doubt, because he's still instilling his system to the other players. It's just up to the player if they want to stick it out or not. There have been multiple players in Ateneo who were not able to handle him and they left. So um, yeah, it's you need to really be tough mentally to be with Coach Ty, I have to say.
yeah, that's great that you guys went. Yeah, you guys were successful with it. You beat LaSalle beat LaSalle like both years, right? 76 and season 77. So in
Yeah.
that journey, how did you guys, even if you were a deep team, that's what I'm curious with like team sport, because even if you're a deep team, sometimes it's hard if there are like egos there. What I want to be the star, or I want to have a lot of points, I want to have a lot of sets. But then with Ateneo, how did you have that consistency that you had the roles defined, like this player, this is your role, and then no overlaps, and then it was successful for two straight years, because yeah, not all collegiate schools here in the country do that regardless of their sport.
So looking back at season 76, I had to serve 1 year residency. So I started season 77, and I still trained with them season 76. And my seniors were Liza Valdez, Denise Lazaro, Ella De Jesus, Bea Tan, Amy Ahomiro. And I have to say, that batch probably has the highest IQ ever. I remember just being completely in shock with how smart they play. Um, and I always say this during the covers, it's not always about power in your attacks, but also placement. And I just remember being so shocked with how good they are. And to talk about ego, I mean, there was not any of that on the team. And I mean, if you had one person with an ego, it affects everyone. It's a domino effect, and it would definitely affect, you know, the wins and losses of your record in UAP. But luckily, the team had that mindset of playing together and just doing your best, and just bottom line, just working hard. I have to say, I remember being in training, and everyone has, that tunnel vision the day before the game. I just remember watching Gia too, who is
Mhm.
now Gia de Guzman. I just remember watching her, and I'm like, people don't know this, but after every UAP game, Gia would watch the game right after, and us, we would we would have team dinners after games, right? Us, we're interacting, we're trying to de-stress from what happened earlier from the game, but then Gia was the only one watching the game. And I'm
Yeah,
like, at that time, I was like, in my head, like, don't you want to, you know,
yeah,
relax for a bit? But
yeah,
no, I mean, when you look at her then and now, and Gia is one of my closest friends. I mean, the reason why she's, I have to say, don't come after me, why she's the best in the Philippines,
yeah,
um, is because of what she did years ago, right? Everything, her skill, it's a build up from when she started, and just her mental toughness, and just the idea of staying calm during crucial moments. I mean, I bow. I bow to Gia.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's for sure. I mean, she's also one of my favorite, yeah, players to watch here in the Philippines because of her sets. Like when Cream lines down, I always tell like my friends or like my mom when we're watching, like, watch, you're gonna come back soon. Like G is just chilling. Like they're down
Yep.
3 points at that, but like almost 20 points already. But they'll come back in that set, and then true enough, they'll come back because she'll find a way to find a executed excellent set for Cream line to get the set. So yeah, that's why I believe that she's really the best setter here in the Philippines. So yeah, talking about that, I saw an article that you really do speak highly of Gia ever since before, and I wanted to ask, like, since you learned a lot from her, like, how were you able to apply it on your own game or in your own role in Ateneo, since you see these high IQ players and
That's
these
right.
players who are dedicated and have tremendous mental toughness.
So I remember during practice, Gia would be on the first six side, I would be on the second six side.
Yeah,
And um, this is not in terms of skill, but just her demeanor. Like I said earlier, just her staying calm. Um, it's really important that, you know, when your setter is calm and collected, everyone will lean towards the setter, right? When things go wrong, they look to the setter. They're basically the quarterback of the team, right? They are the ones that make the plays. But just watching her being so calm, I really learned a lot from her, and it helped me in, like you said earlier, the Generica days with Coach Sherwin. And I just remember there were games where I would be not super nervous, but I just remember that if I stay composed, my teammates will also stay composed because I'm composed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that showed also because I wasn't that familiar with the generic days. Maybe I wasn't watching a lot of it, but then when I read
Yeah,
like things about it, I saw that you guys did well, and it was people were kind of surprised that you were a terrific setter. Maybe play behind G, and they forgot that you're also talented and you could play if
thank you
you
so
are the
much.
primary setter of one of the teams. So yeah, talking about being a setter, was that actually like the position that Ateneo recruited you in? Because I remember there was a time when there was a stretch wherein you were also successful as a libero. I'm not sure if that's right.
Oh my god, I removed that from my core memory. Just kidding. So I was recruited as a setter. Season 78, I was the second libero after Giselle Tan.
Mhm.
Um, I'll never forget this. You probably know about this. We played LaSalle. Actually, prior to UAP starting, we normally go to Thailand
Oh yeah,
to train.
yeah.
So we have tune-up games against the teams there, and Coach Ty didn't play me so much. He was focusing on the first six. So entering UAP, not saying that I wasn't ready, but I had this mindset that um, I'm kind of chill because I didn't think I was going to play. So I'll never forget this. It was MOA Arena, FEU. Um, and mind you, I was not wearing my Lucky Sports bra. Giselle wasn't receiving that well during that game. And then Coach was like, I'm like, oh my God, let's do this. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I happened to play such a good game. And then I had a lot of good games actually prior to that game until the Ateneo LaSalle game. I
Mm.
I blanked. I blanked. And I just remember Coach Ty. There's still some clips on Twitter that still pop up sometimes because fans still favorite where Bea is like fixing my hair because I just look like a wreck. Like I'm just completely like a deer in the headlights, just so nervous because of the crowd.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I when I look back, I enjoyed it. I have to say, but it was difficult after the games because I was just so young. I didn't have that mental toughness yet. I have to say, it just wasn't there. I had a hard time mentally recovering from bad games. But I mean, when I look back now, I think that has shaped me and made me
Mhm.
stronger. So the libero days, you know, I could say it was a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, every athlete or every like person who goes through those things. I don't know. I feel there's like a reason for it, and I think it's a positive all in all. Like
Yes.
with what happened with your career now. So yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't remember those times when you were going against LaSalle though. I mean, maybe I know the game, but then not when. I don't remember you like you said you messed up in the LaSalle game. I don't remember that part of it. So
Good. I think that's a good thing.
okay, okay. Yeah, I don't remember that part of it. But then I wanted to also touch on it because you mentioned a quote in an article that you said when a true character comes out when no one is watching. Like I think you got that when someone asked about you playing behind Gia as the second setter of Ateneo. So what would you say to like athletes or younger individuals who want to be future like collegiate or pro athletes, not only in volleyball but any sport that being versatile and adaptable is integral in their success. And yeah, that's what you said. Like you can expound on the quote when you said the true character comes out when no one is watching.
Yeah, a lot of athletes um a lot of athletes when they're being interviewed, they always have this answer of, my time will come, those type of things, which I completely agree. But it's in that time, that specific time that you're waiting for your time to come, that is that's key for me, because you could have that mindset of, oh, my time will come, but you're actually not going to work for it. So being behind Gia for a few years, it's always been a healthy competition. I told you, on and off the court, we are very good friends. And I believe that that was her time to shine. And I always had a positive light towards it, where my time will eventually come. And it did, I have to say. But to athletes who are probably in a rut and feel like their time won't come, you just have to work hard. Do extra outside of training, do extra workouts, do a specific position work, um, because when the time comes, you're gonna know that you're prepared.
Yeah, that's true, and I believe that I don't know. I'm pretty patient when it comes to some things in life compared to my friends also. So even if it's not sports related, like even academics or
Yes,
whatever
anything.
venture, yeah,
Yep,
they're pursuing. I always tell them like you don't need to be in a hurry. Like we're all young. I mean, but like you're doing your work. You're not being lazy and just lying down and
yep,
hoping it comes. But that's I know that these individuals like hopefully they do the hard work that they need in order to succeed and achieve what they want. So yeah, it's great advice that you said there. But going back to the next part of your Ateneo stint, I'm not sure if you did you miss like 2 seasons before you came back for season 82, if I remember.
yes. So my last season prior to the season 82 was season
79.
79.
Oh yeah.
I didn't play 80. I played Generica 2019, and I think that was season 81 already.
Yeah.
So I played in Generica. I have to say, probably one of the best times in terms of my career, because Coach Reminisces, my favorite coach of all time, I have to say.
Yeah.
He is the best coach for me because he's fair. Um, he really takes the time to train you. And so when I entered back in 2019, I had not played volleyball for a year, right?
Mm.
So, and I was in the semi pros now, right? So when entering, I was not in shape. I didn't really, not saying I didn't know how to play anymore, but I was just so out of the loop with volleyball again. And Coach Sherwin really took the time to train me again. Our call time was 5 p.m. Oh no. Okay, so our call time was 5 p.m. We start 6. He had me go to training an hour every day to do setting drills. And my training was in Manila, and I live in QC.
That's pretty
So
far in terms of the traffic.
it's very far. So this was 2019. Yes, so 2019, I took the LRT for a year and a half.
Wow.
I have to say,
With your bag, like sports bag, like that.
yep, I wore long shorts, Adidas slides, a big shirt. I remember I would wear like cycling on the LRT. Me, you
Yeah.
know me, not knowing what I'm doing, and my
Yeah.
teammates in Generica were like, "Hey, you gotta change your outfit. You can't be
Yeah.
wearing that on the LRT."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, um, I have to say, I miss taking the LRT. It was so fast. It
Mhm.
took me. I always knew exactly what time to leave, when the train would leave to go. So I would
Yeah.
get on Katip, get off in Lagarda. So I had
Yeah.
my headphones at the time. I timed it well, where I knew from the LRT station to the school that we trained in, I think it was like an 8-minute walk. I think my teammates were shocked with what I was doing, because I was the first ever Ateneo player to be on the team. And, there's always um, people have their thoughts about
Yeah.
Ateneans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They, they did not expect that I would take the LRT. And I'm like, guys, like, come on. I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not that maarte.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand. I understand. But yeah, how did that offer come? Because I don't know if there was a particular reason. Maybe you could share why you didn't continue your stint with Ateneo. How did that offer come about after not playing also for a year, and then you were offered by Generica, like they called you?
So I graduated at the Neo 2018. Um, and I remember Coach O, I believe it was, I think Coach Ty's last year of coaching at the Neo season 81, 81 or 80, 80 or
80,
81, 80.
80,
Yep.
I think. Yeah.
And then Coach O was announced the head coach. So I
Yeah.
think I even tried out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized this wasn't for me. I just
Yeah.
felt in my heart. So I went to the tryouts after 2 days, and and my parents were actually here because I think that's when I had graduated. That's right, 2018. I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, I don't think this is for me right now. And so I was the one that reached out to Coach Sherwin because
Oh,
at that
okay.
time he was before he was our assistant coach in
Mm,
Ateneo with Coach
okay.
Ty. So
Yeah.
while Coach Ty was taking care of the first six, Coach Sherwin was taking care of our side. And I'll never forget this. Coach Sherwin would give me feedback from time to time and say, good setting. He was, I have to say, the only one really complimenting me on my setting.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm being scolded by Coach Ty,
Yeah.
Coach Sherwin would say, it's okay. Like, don't, it's okay. Just,
Yeah.
it's okay. So there was always that, bond, I have to say. And during that time, Coach Sherwin was announced head coach of Generica. So I had reached out to him. And there were already two setters before me, Lai Bendong and at the April Ross Hinkpit. So when I entered, it was that late that when we had our first game, they didn't even have my jersey yet. But at that
Oh,
time, I
okay.
was just so happy to, be on a team again after so long. And then months had passed. I was getting my skill back again. I was in shape again. And yeah, I was able to be the starting setter. I think, I'm not sure if it was the start of the All Filipino Conference, but the middle of 2019, I started setting for the team.
Yeah, so playing there Generica, like with a larger role, and you mentioned that there were a lot of individuals who were also vying for the spot. So why do you believe that you were successful? I mean, people could say it's a higher level, maybe it's semi-pro and Generica compared to Ateneo, it's like more veteran or experienced players. And you mentioned that they were surprised that you even went to that team compared to like where the other Ateneo players
Yeah.
go to. So why do you believe that were you just given a break as simple as that because you had the talent and then yeah you were given the opportunity and then you were there to grab it, or were there other factors and why you believe you succeeded in that squad?
I think this ties in with the question that you asked earlier, just like the timing of everything.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
I in terms of skill, I don't, me entering, I was not ready because I had not played for so long. But in terms of my mental, I think that was more powerful in terms of me having that mindset that, okay, Jamie, you're going to get your skill back. All you just have to work is on your mental. And I think because my mental toughness was so strong during that time, because of all everything that I endured with my teammates with Coach Ty, I think the timing was just perfect. Um, I've been lucky to be um, a player of Coach Sherwin Menezes. I think everyone should experience being his coach, being his player. He's really good. I mean, look at him now. He's the
yeah,
coach for Line, and
yeah.
he deserves that.
Yeah, so after playing for Generica for a couple of conferences, you decided to go back to Ateneo, which for some could be surprising because like Joanna Maraginot, I think she also came back,
And Kat,
and Kat Tolentino, and it wasn't really expected that they would also come back at the same time as you. So with that, how long was your contract in Generica, and like did you just tell them like after your contract expired that you'd come back to Ateneo? And similarly, how did you go back to Ateneo? Like did you try out or did they invite you? So what was the process?
So, backtrack to the story I told you earlier about how when I tried out with Coach O, I told him, hey, coach, this is not for me.
Yeah, yeah,
So when I had this conversation with him, I specifically told him, but if you need anything, call me.
yeah,
So when I was in Generica, you know, I think that was really the time that I thrived. And when I look back, it's honestly the best days, my best volleyball days. And so some of my friends who were still at Ateneo would kind of bring it up to me, and I would laugh. I would laugh and be like, guys, like, stop, stop. And then I remember Coach O had reached out to me and was like, let's meet up for lunch. And I was like, oh no, what's this? So when we met up, he told me, don't you remember? You told me, call me if you need anything.
yeah,
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like after a year.
yeah, yeah.
So he was recruiting me back to play for Ateneo. No tryout or anything. And I remember I told him no.
Oh,
And
okay.
I told him no, only because, I've been a team player, like I said. So I'm already on a team and I'm going to leave this team
Yeah,
because there's
yeah.
an opportunity. I didn't think that was right, only because Coach Sherwin had given me the breaks that I've awaited for the longest time. So I talked about it with Coach Sherwin, and he said, go back to UAP. And I said, oh no, this is going to be a hard decision because
Yeah.
I did not expect him to say that. And I'll never forget this. He was saying they deserve to see how you play, because I remember wanting that UAP dream for the longest time, but it wasn't really mine yet because I was behind Gia, and I told you earlier that that just wasn't my time. So, in my thought process, I really had to analyze a lot of things. In my head, I was thinking, okay, is this God's sign that He's finally showing me that UAP is now for me? Because now I'm mentally, emotionally stable. Now my skill is there, and now I've matured. A lot of these decisions that I had, thinking about UAP, it can't be overnight decisions, because I have to think about, they just had one UAP season 81. So they're trying to get back to back. Second, it's Ateneo, which means, okay, spotlight,
Yeah.
pressure. Not saying that I wasn't pressured in Generica, but do I want this magnitude of pressure again? Because
Yeah.
we just had one UAP season 81. Um, Obviously, I went back, and I think I started October 2019.
19?
October,
Yeah.
yes, October 2019. Um, and I just remember at that time, my rookies were Roma Doramal, Faith Nesperos, and
Yeah.
I was the eldest on the team. So I was really that ate. I played a huge role on that team. But I just remember, you know, the reason why I had so many questions running through my head if I should go back. But when I met the girls who had that same passion that I had when I was that age, I was like, I have to go back. And I remember, so I'm very close with Jules, Ponga, and Danny, and they were in the lineup
Oh, yeah.
that year. And I really talked to them, and I said, do you really need me on the team? Is this something where we can just have a good time, us hanging out, being friends again, or do you actually need me? I really had to ask the hard questions, only because I have to give my 100% self again. If I enter
Yeah.
something, I'm not going to give 90. That's too little
Yeah.
to the kids, right? Because I can't just think of me, and I have to say, if a friend also needed my help, I'm there. And they were like, Ate, we need you. So I was like, oh, okay, looks like I'm going back to UAP season 82.
Yeah.
Luckily, Kat and Joe were there. We were the eldest on the team, the seniors there. Um, it was difficult because I had a different role there. Because before I was a rookie, second year, I didn't really have a voice so much, but there I had a voice. I really had to speak up. Um, there were times when I would have to like get mad at the girls. That wasn't really my thing, but I really had to because they were just so young, and a lot of the drills of Coach O, it's very you really have to think with his drills. And so, and I remember before we went to Baguio. So when I moved here, it was twice a day training. And then when we went to Baguio, it was thrice a day training. So I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I remember me and Kat were like, our bodies are not like before, like where we can just dive and just like get up right away. Like at that time, I was what, 24, 25. Of course, not that. I wasn't that old. But it wasn't the same like before where I was like 19 and I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, let's be
Yeah.
quick. And I just remember like, what did we get ourselves into?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in my head, oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? But of
Mhm.
course, um, we knew we did. We knew we
Yeah. Yeah.
we knew we did, no doubt. Yeah, and then unfortunately the pandemic hit, and that crushed us.
Yeah. For
That
sure. For
crushed
sure.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you the starting setter? Because I think Dina wasn't part of the lineup, right? At season 82.
No. So season 82, our first game was so Jaja Margina was the starting setter. I was the backup setter.
Oh, okay.
So our first game was against UP. He had played me for just a little bit, and then come the LaSalle game, and
Yeah.
that saying, play every game like it's your last.
Hmm.
Well, it really was our last, not knowing
Yeah.
anything. And I remember Coach O had played me majority of that game because Jaja was having a difficult time, and you know it reminded me of my first Ateneo LaSalle, right? It was season 78. And I knew what she was going through because that happened to me. And I just would see her demeanor and how nervous she was. I mean, she's starting setter after Dina Wong. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a lot of pressure. And you're playing against LaSalle. So I have that much maturity. And unfortunately, we lost that game in 4 sets. And we were up against Michelle Cobb, who is now a good friend of mine now. And I would bring it up to her and I'm like, dude, like, we could have had that. Like, that was supposed to be ours.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that game also because I was there on the arena. And I also didn't expect it to be the last game. Like what, 2 years? We didn't have UAP volleyball for two
Crazy.
plus years. Yeah, so I was hopeful also that LaSalle was gonna win. I mean, like hopeful you also for Ateneo to win. I mean, and then it got cut short. That was only the first game of LaSalle. I was like, oh, we beat the
Yes.
defending champions. That's it. That's it. We don't know what after that. Yeah.
Well,
So it
at
was
least you ended on a good
unfortunate.
note.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. At least. But yeah, that was a terrific season. I was hoping for it, but then it got halted by the pandemic. But I was curious to also mention that you asked your teammates like sila Pongay on if they really needed you, and I believe yeah they needed a leader to be there with them for season 82. And you mentioned that you wanted to do your help as a leader. I wanted to ask where did that like come from? Where did that stem from? Of you being a leader and being vocal and having the trust. I mean, not everyone. Like if I speak up at any team, it doesn't mean they're all gonna follow me. They're all gonna trust me. But if it's like my close friends, then they'll trust me. But then for
Yeah.
you, since you were jumping back into the team? Like, was it that difficult to actually gain their trust, or maybe not that difficult since you knew them from your earlier stint before you went to Generica?
I think in terms of trust, I think it wasn't hard for them to trust me only because we have such a solid bond outside of volleyball. Like we actually hang out and go out together. Um, I think the difficult part was actually me believing that I can help the kids, and I would just look back at my younger years in Ateneo, and I have very, I have empathy towards them. I really look at their situation and put myself in their shoes, and I look back at them, Faith, when Coach O would be scolding her. I would really talk to her like, it's okay, just do your thing, you can do it, right? Because that's what they need to hear, motivational things on the side aside from your coach. And I felt through all my failures and hardships, all the ups and downs, I think I was a good leader. I remember Pongay being the captain at that time, but I
Yeah.
remember that, I really was needed there, and I'm happy I was there. I was happy.
Yeah. How about, yeah, you mentioned that it was a long process. Like you started October until March when the season started,
Yeah.
and it was difficult because the season was halted like prematurely. So how did you feel? Like, was it automatic? Like you weren't gonna come back anymore since you were gonna be over the age limit? Like, what was the mindset like for you? Was the pandemic? Because we didn't know how long it would last. It lasted so long with all the variants. But like as time went, like how did you decide na I'll play na for Chocomucho? And how did that process come about?
So when I was in Ateneo, Coach O and I were already talking about me going to Chacamucho. So in terms of UAP, I definitely knew that I was not going to go back, um, because I remember specifically when they had canceled our game. Our next game after LaSalle was UE, and they had
Okay.
canceled it, and then they continued canceling the games. And I just remember we had to wait a month for them to actually announce that UAP is not coming back. I
Yeah.
told myself, okay, I put my heart, soul, and energy in this season 82 lineup, but I knew, okay, I'm not going to go back. So I'm grateful that I had Chakamucha there. I believe I started training with them. My first training was with them was the pandemic Zoom training, because they were already in a league. They were in PVL already during that time. So yeah, our first training was with in Zoom, and then in 2021 is when we had the bubble, and that's our first time training like all together in one court.
Yeah. Talking about like shortly about your PVL experience, like you played for Chocomucho. I think you signed up for Akari, and if you I'm not sure if you played for them as well for how many conferences, but how was that experience playing for the PVL, and what made you actually decide to not continue pursuing it for now at least and focus more on broadcasting?
Yeah, so when I was in Chocomucho, and then I was actually in Bali Pier prior to Akari. I was
Oh
in
yeah,
Bali
Bali
Pier
Fury.
for a few months. That's where I met Mariam Buitre, Rap Aguilar, Carly Hernandez, Janine Marciano, who are my very close friends too. So I'm grateful for that. With Akari, I actually was not in the lineup the first two games, and I felt like volleyball in general just wasn't for me anymore. Um, and like I told you at the start of this podcast, I don't quit when things get hard, but um, a lot of dreams comes with sacrifices, right? So,
Mhm.
I felt in my heart that I had to let go of this because things just were not working out. Um, and I'm grateful for it. I always say this, it's only a loss if you don't learn. So with
Yeah.
all these, um, I wouldn't consider it a loss though. When I look back on everything that I've gone through, I'm very grateful to where I am now. I think it allowed me to plant a lot of seeds to future goals that I have. And now, yeah, I'm in broadcasting and I love it so much.
Since yeah, you mentioned that you played professionally with three teams and you want to continue being broadcasting. I wanted to ask if you have other dreams that you'd want to pursue. Like, is there any part of you that still wants to return to playing volleyball in the future, or do you want to be a coach? Because I saw like it's in your LinkedIn that you were a coach before in the U.S. or in San Francisco.
Yeah,
So is
for
there any
little
plans?
kids. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to do anything sort of being a coach or anything sort of anything else in sports related or even non-sports related outside of broadcasting?
A lot of people ask me if I miss it, if I miss playing. And I
Hmm.
always say if there's one thing I miss, it's being part of a team,
Yeah.
you know, being with your teammates, spending time off the court. That's what I miss the most. In terms of coaching, definitely not. Oh, definitely not. In terms of broadcasting, for sure, I just want to continue to do my best, and hopefully more opportunities come my way. Like I said, I love it so much, and I started in February, and this whole time I've been trying to figure out or understand why I love it so much, and I think it's because I'm being me,
Yeah.
right? I would hate to be in a position where I'm not myself, right? It
Hmm.
it just doesn't make sense to me anymore now that, I think it's also rooted from me being on my own for 10 years, right? I moved here 2013 and now it's 2023. So 10 years of learning a lot of things on my own the hard way. It wasn't easy just being away from my parents and the rest of my relatives. I think um, all those factors come into play, but hopefully more opportunities in broadcasting. I would love that so much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something I'd also want, and hopefully to be able to broadcast with you soon. In volleyball, PVL or UAAP. You never know.
Manifest.
Yeah, manifest, manifest. You never know. But yeah, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to tell the viewers like one thing or a couple of things that you'd want them to come out of this whole episode. Like, what would you want them to remember? Or what stand out from you for everything you said?
So after talking for um, about an hour, and for those watching, I was telling Diego off air that this is my first time being interviewed in a very long time in terms of talking about me, right? Normally, if I'm being interviewed, it's about work. But if there's, let's say, okay, if there's one piece of advice that I would like to say based off my learnings, a lot of things that I had to unlearn from being here in the Philippines, um, don't rush God's plan. There's this saying that, sorry, I watch the Kardashians. Sorry, I'm
Go,
obsessed with them. And
go
Khloe,
ahead, go ahead.
Khloe Kardashian says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Mhm.
And that really struck out to me because, you have this goal, or let's say a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan. Sometimes it won't happen, sometimes it will, but don't think just because it doesn't happen that there's nothing better out there. Sometimes it could be something that's better that God has actually planned for you because He's the one that made us, right? He's the one that has a plan for us. So I think it's um, don't rush God's timing of things and just to work hard. Know your strengths and weaknesses, hone your weaknesses, and maximize on your strengths for sure.
Yeah, those are excellent advice that people could emulate wherever the career. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, most probably you're interested in sports, but you could have other jobs that you could,
Yeah.
utilize the advice given by you. So yeah, before we wrap up, I'd want to thank you again, Jamie, for joining me here on the podcast. And yeah, I asked my guest a couple of questions before we wrap up. So one is, as you know, since you've been here in the Philippines for 10 years, like Filipinos are not as vocal or not as or pretty shy when it comes to voicing out their opinions, especially on social and political issues. Like, and in the NBA or even in the states, they're more vocal when it comes to these things. Like, it starts with sports, like, and athletes like LeBron James, like, it started in the NBA bubble. They were more vocal with their opinions, but here in the Philippines, believe that we're more, yeah, shy or timid. But then when it was like the pandemic and there were issues that they felt were affecting the society, did voice it more willingly compared to before. So for you as an athlete or as a sports personality, what's your opinion on these sports personalities being vocal on social and political issues and amplifying their voice and increasing the awareness with their followers and their platform?
I think it's important with the platform that volleyball has given us. I think it's important to share your ideas. I mean, there will always be someone that is not in your favor. Um, but as long as you have your own opinion and as long as you're not hurting other people, that's what I
Yeah,
say. You have your own opinion, but as long as you are mindful and aware that your intentions should be pure, I think it's fine.
yeah, for sure. I agree with that 100%. So for the next question, it's less serious. If you had the opportunity to have dinner with
Wait, I
five
have a
people,
question. My
sure.
my lighting, is my lighting okay? I could turn up my lighting. Is it dark?
I could still see you clearly though, but
Is
then
it fine? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
So
because I have a light, but I need to like plug it. Are you sure it's fine?
yeah, I could see you clearly.
Okay, I just want to. Okay, nice. I still have set. Okay. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Might be.
okay. No worries, no worries. So if you had the opportunity to have dinner with five people, dead or alive, who would you invite?
Oh my gosh. Okay. The first one. Okay. Well, in terms of musicians, I would have to say sorry. Sorry for the haters out there. I love Justin Bieber so much. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Don't come after me, guys. Second, I would have to say Barack Obama, no doubt.
Mhm.
Democrat, no doubt on that. Sorry
Yeah.
for the people out there. The third
Yeah.
person, um, I'm going to say another musician because I love music. Whitney Houston, no doubt.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, Whitney Houston, no doubt. Um, there's this book that I read called The Book of Joy. Um, it's by this Archbishop Tutu, and he passed away just a few years ago. And I remember reading that book during such a difficult time, so I would add him to the list fourth. Um, Watching Food Network all my life, I would have to say Gordon Ramsay,
Okay. 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 Yeah. That's a.
and he could cook for me.
Oh.
He could
Okay.
cook
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. Say a unique list because usually, my guests they have sports personalities. Like they have
Yeah,
also musicians or like heroes like Barack Obama or even not local heroes. But then it's cool that you also have others not in the sports, so you have a variety and something else to talk
yeah.
about in that dinner. So for the final question, I ask my guests if since I invite people through social media or through email, and I'm pretty sure you do know that, and that's how I invite everyone here on the podcast. Who would you suggest that would have a great story to tell, or would be a person that would be fun to talk to about sports, whether volleyball or any other sport that I could talk about? Like, who would you suggest that would be great for a podcast?
Hmm. I would have to say, um, So these athletes, I have quite a few that I could mention because they
Yeah.
also have been in my shoes in terms of just being away from home.
Mm.
Um, uh, Women's basketball, Trina Goitinko,
Oh yeah,
Melissa
yeah.
Newsome, Kat Tolentino. I believe Kat has a lot to share because she's gone through so much in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just ACL and moving to the Philippines. And maybe another player would probably be um, Kim Hikiliana.
Oh yeah, I
It's
got
so
her
funny. I
already.
just
I
okay,
got her recently. I think a few episodes ago.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you love how I mentioned my best friends?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
um,
What were you gonna say about Kim? Sorry.
no, it's okay. Because she's also in the same boat as me in terms of redirecting her career as well. She's
Mm.
in fashion school now, so
Yeah.
we stopped playing volleyball at the same time. So we're kind of in the same boat of kind of self discovery outside of volleyball, which is great. It's a good journey
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
volleyball.
Yeah, when I had her on the podcast, I was interested because I don't know much about like the fashion things she was saying. So it's like, okay, new knowledge. Check,
Yep.
let me check. Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't even that familiar with many of the things she was saying, but it's a great discussion that we also had. So yeah, thank you so much again, Jamie, for joining me here on the podcast. And do you have any final message before you go?
Um, First off, thank you so much for reaching out to
Yeah.
me. And for those who um, will watch this podcast, support Jago in his podcast. Like, subscribe on the DVD show.
Thank you. And yeah, before you go, Jamie, is it okay if we take a picture?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'll take it from here. One, two, three. Okay, thank you, JV, for